Now, tensions between Britain and France have intensified after French authorities have detained a British trawler off its coast. France has also, once again, threatened to impose sanctions against the UK over fishing rights. The so-called Cod War started after post-Brexit Britain restricted access to British waters for EU fishermen. Just this week, France has threatened to impose harsh customs controls on British imports, a ban on British vessels from some French ports, and even cutting off electricity to the Channel Islands unless Britain allows French boats back in. The UK says that breaks international law. We are now joined by Dr. Alan Mendoza, the co-founder and executive director at the Henry Jackson Society, a transatlantic foreign policy and national security think tank. Lovely to have you back on, Alan. How do you interpret those tensions between the UK and France? Is it just the French sounding off? Do you think they are actually going to do anything?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, we've already seen them do something in the sense that they have started seizing, or for want of a better word, fining British ships. So I think there is certainly an intention on the part of the French to cause some trouble here. How far it goes is another matter. I think a lot of this depends on how this issue gets resolved between the two countries, and also whether any other European countries are willing to talk to France and say, look, come on, just, if you want to have a dispute with Britain, do it legally, do it through arbitration, but don't start taking extra legal measures or unlawful measures in order to enforce something. Because guess what? We're trying to renegotiate a Brexit deal right now.
Yeah, it seems to me the EU have rather washed their hands of the French woes at the moment, and France, therefore, is acting rather unilaterally. But, I mean, should we just say, well, go on then, have some boats in our waters again, despite the fact we're supposed to be taking back control, to assuage the French? Or is it right that we dig our heels in and say, the law's the law, these are our waters, this is the new world that we now live in, suck it up?
Well, of course it's right to enforce a deal that was agreed, basically. That's the whole point of it. Fishing, we know, is a very emotive issue. It's an issue that really matters to certain communities in the UK. And they were promised that they would be getting their waters back, basically. And there was a whole programme in place for how that would happen, with differing shares occurring over the course of the next 5 years until 2026. And the French know full well that the numbers of licensings they'll be getting will be reducing over that time. So for us to change our position on this would be wrong, firstly. It would be very disappointing to those communities who trusted in the deal, and it would send entirely the wrong message to France, which might wish to push even further claims as a result of it. So we're going to have to stand firm on this, Alex.
And what do we do if the French kick up a fuss and they do things like cut off power supply to Jersey, or decide to blockade imports from the continent coming into the UK in time for Christmas? I mean, how do we retaliate to that?
Well, let's start by saying that if they do that, they would be sending a very powerful message to any country that has a deal with France, any ally or any country that regards itself as an ally of France, that France just simply cannot be trusted. Now, I'm not sure that the French would like to be in that position where essentially their word would no longer be trusted internationally. So I would hope we'd never get into that situation in the first place. However, were it to come, we would have to think long and hard about, possible retaliatory methods that go the other way, of course. Now, what we don't want, of course, is to create some kind of, if you like, transport war between the two countries. But there are, numerous areas where we might be able to sort of make life a bit more difficult for the French, should it be required. But let's just stress again, we hope it's not required. We hope the French will see sense, and that if they have a gripe with what's going on in fishing, they take it to arbitration, they take it to a legal conclusion, and don't take illegal action.
What do you think that the end point is going to be in this argument? Do you think we will be able to rub along nicely with the French again, or do you think that Macron is just far too stubborn, and that the French are about to get wrapped up in their own presidential elections in spring next year, and so there's a lot of playing politics going on at the same time? Do you think we are going to finish this row before Christmas, or do you think there's going to be some pretty tough relationships ahead?
Well, I think you're right to highlight the fact there's a French presidential election coming around the corner. Mr. Macron is fully aware that he's not the most popular man in France, or woman in France, for that matter, in any way, shape or form. And as a result, he needs something, particularly to try and outflank candidates to his right, who've been gaining in the polls in recent months. So for him, it's quite a useful row to keep on being able to stir. Even if he doesn't intend to do anything about it, what it shows is that he is protecting French interests. He is a man who could be trusted to lead France for a second term. And I suspect that because that election is likely to rumble on in uncertainty next year, we will see more of this cropping up after Christmas too.